House will come to order. Members, today's prayer will be given by Representative Curtis Travis.
May we bow our heads. Oh, Heavenly Father, we come this morning in your precious Son, Jesus' name. Oh, Father, coming before your throne of grace right now. Coming as, Father, as men and women, Father, who you have designated at this time to do a leadership role in the state of Alabama. Father, we come recognizing that it's not about us, but it's all about you, for who in you we have our being. Father, we come and we ask that you continue to remind us that this day that have been presented before us, we would never have another opportunity to review this day again. So, Father, we ask that, Lord, as we go about this day of work, of doing laws and passing bills, Father, let us not forget your commandment to love one another, to be reminded us that we are servants to serve your people and to serve you. Lord, be with us in our deliberations. Be with us, oh Father, in our thoughts, and be with us, Father, as we go forward doing your will today. We thank you for your loving kindness that you have blessed us to see this day. Now keep us until, oh Father, till we have that often journey to meet you face to face. In your precious Son, Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Members, today's Pledge of Allegiance will be led by Kathleen Stearns. She is the intern for the House and a student at the University of Alabama in Birmingham.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Clerk, call roll.
Mr. Speaker, Allman, Baker, Bedsole, Blackshear, Bolton, Boyd, Bracey, Brinyark, Brown, Butler, Carnes, Chestnut, Clark, Klaus, Collins, Colvin, Crawford, Daniels, Datcher, Drummond, DuBose, Easterbrook, Ellis, England, Ensler, Estes, Faulkner, Fiddler, Fincher, Fort, Garrett, Gidley, Gavan, Gibbons, Gray, Hall, Hammett, Harbison, Harrison, Hassel, Hendricks, Hill, Hulk, Jones, Hollis, Hulsey, Hurst, Ingram, Jackson, Jones, Keel, Kirkland, Lamb, Lands, Lawrence, Lee, Lipscomb, Lomax, Lover, and Marcus, McCampbell, McClammy, Mooney, Moore M, Moore P, Morris, Oliver, Paramore, Pascal, Pettis, Pringle, Rafferty, Ream, Reynolds, Rigsby, Robbins, Robertson, Ross, Sellers, Sells, Shaver, Shaw, Shedd, Shiree, Simpson, Smith, Sorrell, Stodhagen, Standridge, Starnes, Stringer, Stubbs, Tillman, Travis, Treadaway, Underwood, Wadsworth, Warren, Whit, Wharton, Wilcox, Wood D, Wood R, Woods, Yarborough.
"61 members advanced to roll. Quorum is present. The House is ready to transact business. Chair recognizes the gentleman from Lee, Chairman Lovern.
Mr. Speaker, I request that leaves of absence be granted for absent members.
Okay, no charge.
Any objections? Hearing none, the absent members are excused. The chair further recognizes the gentleman from Lee.
Mr. Speaker, I have a report.
House of Representatives, your Standing Committee on Rules begs leave to report that it has carefully examined the Journal of the House for the fourth legislative day and finds the same to be correct. Signed, Representative Joe Lovern, Chairman.
Mr. Speaker, I move that the reading of the journal at length for the fourth legislative day be dispensed with.
Any objections? Hearing no objections, the reading of the journal is dispensed with. The chair recognizes the gentleman from Mobile, Speaker Pro Tem, for a purpose of making announcements.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, the OWCAP prayer rally will be on the front steps at 11 a.m. In case of rain, the rally will take place in the RSA Plaza 6th floor. The League of Municipalities legislative reception is from 5 to 6:30 at the Renaissance. The reception honoring Senator Jabbo Wagner's 51 years of service will be at 5 o'clock at RSA Plaza. The welcome back reception tonight, hosted by Speaker Ledbetter and myself, will be from 6 to 8 at the RSA Activity Center on Dexter Avenue. And please don't forget the OWCAP breakfast tomorrow morning at 7:30 a.m. at RSA Plaza. Margie? Today it's my honor and privilege to announce that it's Matt Simpson's birthday, so we need an ethically correct happy birthday song.
On three. 1, 2, 3. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Matt. Happy birthday to you.
All those in favor of Matt's birthday, say aye. No. You got our announcement when we're coming back.
Well, I'm going to go ahead and say I move that when we adjourn today, we leave the Journal open, that we reconvene on Thursday, February the 13th at 10 a.m. I'll make the additional when we close. Thursday at 10 a.m.
All those in favor, say aye. Any opposed? We'll have the motion prevails. Clerk now receives the reports. Standing committees proceed throughout the day. The House is now in position to introduce bills and resolutions. The chair recognizes the gentleman from Lee, Chairman Lovern.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I have a resolution.
Clerk, see the resolution.
House Resolution Number 52 by the House Rules Committee, the Special Order Calendar.
Chairman Lovern, you're recognized.
Move for adoption.
Chair recognizes the gentleman from Mobile, Representative Bracy.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Would the gentleman yield?
Yes, sir.
I just wanted to kind of get a little clarity on kind of how things are going to go today. So if you can just kind of help me out. I know we've had different types of 10-minute calendars in the past, and I know this would be, I guess, our first special order calendar for this session, right?
Yes, sir.
Because we've been working kind of off the regular order. Wasn't really sure. Seemed like we was kind of going out of order on the regular order. So I wasn't quite sure how we were doing that, and I was just hoping that we could help with some explanation.
And so our time is restricted, and so we need to move through some legislation so that we can be done in time for our committees to meet, to move through. We've got meetings throughout the day. First bill on the calendar, for instance, is one that we debated and dealt with last year, so I thought...
We dealt with that bill this particular bill last year?
Well, that concept of that bill, there may be some variations that we've all seen through committee, and so mainly just the time restraint that we've dealt with to move through the day with everyone's meetings. We need to be done in a timely manner. So whenever we start, we're just going to spend a specific amount of time talking, have any points with it, and then move to a vote of the body.
Okay. So as far as like the 10-minute calendars, how does that work? Like I know in the past, maybe not in more recent sessions, but we've had 10-minute calendars that, you know, when you go through the process, if the bill doesn't pass in the 10 minutes, they just kind of pull it, and then it just kind of go back into the pick list, and it's able to come back up. So it's not that the bill actually dies. It's just kind of like it's just kind of delayed until the next opportunity for a bill to be voted on is that this type of calendar, or what is this? Is like the cloture type of special order calendar?
Well, that's very similar with the 10 minutes. The only difference is at the end of the 10 minutes, the speaker will call for a vote up or down on the legislation. So,
Okay. So would the legislation have an opportunity to be debated?
yes,
Any of these 4 bills?
in this 10 minutes can be debated.
So it's very, very limited debate.
Well, it's 10 minutes on today's debate, yes.
Okay. So I guess I'm thinking that, bills, all bills I think deserve, merit and deserve to be looked at, because one of these particular bills, the bill grew a lot from the original bill, which I think would lead to more discussion and conversation, given the opportunity to say, hey, what are the changes? What happened? Because if it was as simple as, I guess, just a definition, it could be a one-pager. Sure. So it's kind of like, so we should have an opportunity to have, true open discussion about it. I think that's what the citizens would want. And then have an up or down vote. Not saying that it should go on forever, right? We don't want to be here and miss committee and be here all day having the conversation. But I do think that 10 minutes on any legislation is a lot, especially something that could possibly be controversial, because, we have like the 10-minute calendar a lot of times on non-controversial bills. Sometimes it's on bills that we know we need to allow the member the opportunity to get the bill past the House. They may not have time in the Senate, but it helps the members to be able to go home and say, look, I did this, I got my bills passed. Create that type of thing. And then also like the consent type of calendar, where pretty much everybody agree that these are bills that, probably didn't have to withstand a lot of debate. People are kind of on the same page on it. The committee has vetted it. The consent chair has looked at it. You've looked at it. Leadership, and say, okay, these are good to go. But on a more controversial type, it's kind of like it just seemed like it would warrant for more conversation and not just a 10-minute up or down. You know what I mean? It just doesn't seem like it would be, especially at this stage. Like it seemed like at this stage of session that we should be able to debate bills. I mean, debate bills on their merits and let them stand on what they are and up or down, especially when they go changing. Because the bill changed a lot, and it didn't reduce, it grew. So it may not have been simple changes. So. Or is this like a pattern? Like, is this something that we're gonna just be doing this year? Because this is kind of new this early in the session to me.
Well, it's new to us to do 2 3-day weeks in a row. That's not what we normally do, but just to expedite the moving along of the session, 2 3-day weeks puts us in a little bit of a time restraint. Like I was talking earlier, this subject matter. Maybe not this specific legislation, but this subject matter was discussed a lot last year. A lot of discussions leading into the session about this legislation. And, with our office, we try to find ways to keep everything moving on time, to make sure everyone's legislation that's important to them moves along. I haven't had people in my office truly wanting to have more questions or have more thoughts on this legislation.
Right.
So,
but I guess I would think that the questions and the thoughts on the legislation shouldn't come to your office. This would be the place for it.
Well,
The opportunity for that would be, because I know I don't think you would want 104 members on every bill coming to you saying, hey, and especially if it's not a bill that you're sponsoring, to be like, hey, I want to discuss this legislation. It seemed like they should be talking to the sponsor of the bill, or either have an opportunity to speak on the legislation out here. I guess I'm just thinking about the fairness of the process. I probably won't be speaking on the bill, because if I do, the 10 minutes will be up. But if I wanted to, I think I should be afforded the opportunity, you know, and it just seemed like this early in the session, you are very efficient. Like, you know, this is efficient to, like, it's gone. The train is gone. It's moving. And if you didn't set your alarm this morning to get here for 8 o'clock, you're probably going to miss the train by the time we vote. And so it is efficient, but I don't know if efficient is always the way when it comes down to this, because the difference in this legislation, this is final passage. This legislation could be signed as early as when?
Well, it could go to the governor immediately. Sure.
Yeah, it could be signed as early as today, right?
Sure.
So it's not like, you know, we're rushing through something that's gonna be heavily debated, because, you know, sometimes that happens. Say, okay, they'll fix it in the Senate, or they'll catch it in the Senate, and they do the same thing. But we're talking about final passage of legislation that will probably be signed by the governor today, that basically, if a person didn't talk on the calendar today, they won't even have an opportunity to address it at all. And 10 minutes, just it's life-changing stuff. It's a real big deal. It's a very controversial topic, and just 10 minutes, just to me, it just doesn't give it justice. It doesn't give it, you know, what it deserves. And actually, for none of these, you know, none of these bills, it seems like at this point of the session, we shouldn't quite be here.
Well, I can assure you, I have much respect for the gentleman, as you know that, and
Yes, sir.
this is a rarity just because of the timelines we're under, and we always want debate, and I think it's important, the entire legislative process, the communication between the chairman of committees, the communication between our office,
Yes, sir.
communication through the speaker's office. Each step's very important, and to, you know, the debate starts way before session starts.
Exactly.
And it keeps going on past the session. But today, this is a rarity just because of the timeline, and something I expect we won't see that often. So.
Okay, thank. One last question: Is this something that's going to happen often throughout?
The gentleman's
the session?
time has expired. Chair recognizes the gentleman from Marengo, Representative McCampbell.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for the recognition. Will the gentleman yield?
Yes, sir.
You know, you and I were in a meeting this morning, and in that meeting, I made some comments regarding how we should be looking at and treating each other, how we should deal with our fellow man. You know, did I not make those comments this morning? Some of the things that I said, would it not help you think about somebody else and their feelings and how they are dealing with some certain things? Did I not make those comments?
I don't know that we were in the same place this morning. I was at breakfast across the
I
street.
was also. I made those comments.
Well, I missed your comments.
You missed my comments. Okay.
I had to come over here to help get the train rolling. So,
Okay. So maybe you missed those comments,
but
but
those
I
sound
did
like
make
some great comments that you.
I did make those comments. And I'm not down here to debate the merits of not a single bill on this calendar. But I am standing here to help this body understand, help our leadership understand that each and every one of us were elected to represent at least 48,000 people in our district. And that 48,000 people are made up of a whole lot of different type of people. So we are to at least be able to make arguments on these bills, you know, it's a 10-minute calendar. Now, I've been here a few years now, and I'm just starting to see these closer 10-minute calendars because that's what this is. And so it's without having to actually go through the full motion. But I'm one of those that believe if you're going to cloture me, at least give me the opportunity to make the case for the people that I represent. Now, you know, when you look at my vote on this, on some of these bills, they may not agree with the tenor of some of these bills, but they are going to be a vote that either represents my personal feelings regarding them, and, you know, I'll stand up to my constituents with my personal feelings. But I have an obligation to be able to represent the different interests of the people in the district that I serve, as well as the people of the state of Alabama. So my former colleague that was up here, he asked the question, is this the way we will be conducting business this year? That's the thing that I want to know, because if it is, then, you know, I've got to decide how am I going to address that, because it's not being fair to all the people. It's not being fair to everyone. How do you get people on a closer 10-minute motion? How do you get a bill on that? Do I need to bring you a list of bills that I'd like to have on a 10-minute closure bill, a closure calendar, and you would put those bills on a 10-minute closure calendar?
Well, you know, the same process prevails with we've done in previous years. You would do the form that your bill's out of committee and that you're ready for it to move forward. We do that because I don't want to move a bill forward that you're not ready for it to move forward. So we have that process in place, and then from that, we generate a pick list of bills that the Rules Committee will choose from that are in line with the legislation that we feel the body wants to move forward with. And if there's any special requests, you can make that on that same form. So certainly we welcome any bill from you, and certainly make that request through our office. Be happy to entertain any suggestion you have.
And what makes a bill qualify then for a 10-minute closure calendar?
Well,
because I understand with the consent calendar, we have specific things that all of us would have to adhere to in order to be able to get it on that calendar. But I want to know what specifically can I be looking at as I try to come up with bills to put on a 10-minute closure calendar? What kind of bills do I need to have?
Well, for instance, today is just a timeline of schedule. It's a very important.
Somebody
factor
behind
to
me,
move forward.
vocally said I needed to have a good one.
But you need,
You know, and a good bill. And you know, thing I've always understood, the term good can be subjective. You understand?
I do.
So now, how do I get a bill on a 10-minute closure calendar?
Well, you can, like I said earlier, you can make that request to our office when you fill that form out, or you're welcome to come meet with me directly. And a lot of variables come into play as far as our schedule, the legislative process, and as we move through, and we'll be setting priorities based on several factors. So certainly welcome. Anybody in this body is welcome to make those requests. Certainly.
Okay, and indeed, you don't make the final decision, though, do you?
Don't make the final decision on.
About whether or not we get a 10-minute closure calendar.
Well, there's much discretion to every chairman, but the ultimate decisions that are made go to the discretion of the speaker in
Okay.
the situation. But there's discretion, and then empowerment and entrustment is through the chairman of the body, the leadership, and then each member in here to be able to work through that process just gave you the process through my office. Each chairman will have their own discretion for their own process for their committee, but that's how we work in the Rules Committee.
Okay, and I'm literally speaking about a 10-minute closure calendar. That's what I'm actually speaking about. It's disheartening, and this early in the session that we feel we need to closure, not give the ability to literally flush out and debate. That's what we ought to do down here, because everybody don't, as a body, we are to collectively come up with with the good things for this state. But when you exclude part of the body from having a say, because that's basically what this is doing, it's excluding a portion of the body from articulating the things that would be, maybe some concerns in their district. Now, like I say, some of my votes probably are more in line with a lot of stuff that you believe in. Some of them are going to be against things that you believe in. That's just the process. But at least you and I should have the opportunity to debate it, flush it all out, and then cast the vote. Once we've done all of that, then we can walk out of here, and say we did the best that we can for the people that we serve.
Well,
I may have won a round, and you may have won a round. It doesn't really matter as long as both of us have the opportunity to be in the fight. But when you decide that I don't even deserve to stand on the battlefield and fight for my folks, then I think that's where I have the problem. And I hope you understand that it's not a problem with the bills. It's a problem with this process. And I have a serious problem and concern with it. Thank you now.
thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Chair recognizes the lady from Madison, Representative Hall.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Would the gentleman yield?
Yes, ma'am.
So generally, my experience has been with the 10-minute calendar. So last week, I felt like we didn't do very much of anything. We had 3 days, and we did 3 days. And this week we come and we start today by having a 10-minute calendar. Now, generally, a 10-minute calendar, when you vote on that, you can vote in the way I agree with the gentleman that was just before me. This bases a cloture. Whether or not you have any opposition or whatever, you don't get to do that. Am I understanding this process correctly?
Well,
in terms of the 10-minute calendar?
There'll be up to 10 minutes of discussion and debate, but then that will move to a vote on the motions.
But you previously, how is this different from previously the 10-minute calendar has been presented?
Well, good question. We've done 10-minute calendars in the past,
Right.
where it's very similar to a consent calendar, where people are bills that feel like we can move through the process quickly, and we move through. And if there's certain issues that come about, we work through that process with it. The only difference is because we're on a timeline today, because we got all the other meetings of the day, that we'll move forward with that vote so that everyone can get back to the legislative parts of the rest of their day as well. So
But
I know a lot of committees are meeting at 9:30, and some meetings throughout the day that people will be in line for. So we're in a time constraint today.
We weren't in a time constraint last week.
Well, and as you're well aware, the the legislative process with our first 2 days. We had bills have to be filed, and then they can get their second reading. Committees could meet, and then bills have to roll out of committee before they can be considered by the body. And we only had limited committee action last week. We've got a lot of committees meeting today, moving legislation that's important to everybody in this body. And so we'll move through that. And then tomorrow we'll be able to have I would say, a more robust and more numbers calendars if we can, and take the bills that roll out of committee today, and then the same for Tuesday. So as the 3-day weeks are good to get us moving, but they're difficult from a rules perspective because there's not a lot of bills to move forward. And so as committees meet and they're doing their legislation and rolling out, there'll be a lot more legislation to choose from. And so tomorrow we'll have
Stop right there.
elections.
Did you say that there's not a lot of bills to move out? With all of the bills, there's a number of bills that were pre-filed, so we have plenty of bills.
Well, we can.
But to limit us, as has been stated before, to a 10-minute calendar, and I mean, anybody that's been serving here would realize that this is by design, because you think that you don't want the members that may be in opposition to a particular bill not to have that opportunity. And I think what you're, and so that create a feeling of you're not concerned about the minority. Basically, that's the way it comes across. Now, it may not be your intent, but that's how it comes across. Okay, we know we're going to have some people raising questions. We know we're going to have these issues in terms of why we are dealing with Senate Bill number 79. But even that bill, whatever it is, whatever the vote is going to be, why put it on a 10-minute calendar? The other two, Medicaid agency, and it's based on a recommendation from the U.S. Preventative Services Task Force. Well, I looked that up because I'd never heard of this task force, but we have that bill on here. Then you have one, the State Board of Pharmacy Employees, from discipline pharmacists from recommending off-label medical treatments. So, but the main one that probably is going to get the most attention is Senate Bill 79. And I'm saying when we have voted, had a 10-minute calendar before, you had a process by which if you spent more than that time, that bill went back on the calendar. And so when it came before your committee last night or whenever you voted, was there an opportunity for your members to determine whether or not, or did you come with the recommendation that these bills be placed on a 10-minute calendar? Was there a vote?
That was my recommendation.
Your recommendation.
And the committee had opportunities to vote on that process.
And your committee voted, and the members that serve on your committee voted for this bill to be the bill that would be on the 10-minute calendar today. There was no opposition.
There was opposition, but the vote carried in the committee. And like I was telling the gentleman earlier, this is a rarity based on the timeline with all the legislative process that we're dealing with today. And this is not a calendar setup that you'll typically see from us.
That is certainly true.
So
I hope not.
Well,
I would certainly hope not.
I enjoy talking with you, Ms. Hall, but we don't have to talk up here every week. So I try to make sure we're moving through the process, and this will be a rarity as far as the timeline that we were put into to get through the legislative day. So
it is very interesting to me. And as I said, I thought about last week, and I said, well, I have remembered us coming in when we were having a 3-day week. We would come in, have a committee meeting. The next day, Wednesday, we would have had a bill before us. And it just felt like from my perspective, I'm saying from my perspective, that last week, when you're talking about committees need to meet, that didn't happen. in many cases.
Some met and some weren't able to. And
What do you mean they weren't able to?
well, they didn't have enough. A lot of bills were filed on the first day, a lot of bills filed on the second day, and we're upwards of 500 bills total now. So it takes a review process. Each chairman is looking at the agenda for our potential agenda for their committee. Some interests, whether it be people of the state or other members, have questions about legislation. As you know better than I do, the real body of this work is done in committee work to try to make sure work through this process. So each chairman, which is very capable to try to work and determine what legislation's ready to move forward, which ones need a little more work, which questions need to be answered. So a lot of that process started last week, and then we'll move forward and continue as we get more and more bills that come available that are ready for a vote of the entire body.
I certainly would hope that as we move through this session, that the bills that you feel that are important, excuse me, to this administration and to this leadership, that you would not find it is important to put it on a 10-minute calendar. Whether I agree with it or not, I certainly think we ought to have the opportunity to have the discussion. Because you have the majority, you have cloture, you have all of those things, but it is not a good feeling to feel that you start the first day that we start, and you start with a 10-minute calendar, and then you start with what you think is probably the most controversial of them at the top of that calendar, and then you're going to give only 10 minutes for discussion. I just hope that we would find ourselves being, and I won't say thoughtful, because that is certainly not the approach that seems to be, but be mindful of the fact that it's okay for us to disagree. I'm certainly one of those. We can disagree without being disagreeable. And when we do that, we can still give everybody the opportunity to have their input or have their say about what is going on as we move forward. I regret that we find ourselves at this particular point, or I find myself feeling some kind of way about where we are at this particular point, because I think that it would be more sensible to me in terms of having, and especially if you say that you had some opposition, but they were not, that opposition was not in the majority. Thank you.
The lady's time has expired. Chair recognizes the lady from Macon, Representative Warren.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My dear Chairman, I must apologize for missing the meeting on yesterday, but I had no idea that we were going to have a 10-minute calendar today. As a matter of fact, last night at dinner, somebody started discussing it. I said, we got one bill I know that's going to be in there that's going to need some full discussion. And this is not saying that it's a bad bill. It's just saying that there are some things that are not clear. And we had this bill in our health meeting on Tuesday, which was yesterday. And I think that the definitions that they have are good, but there are still some things that I think a full discussion needs to be held with this body for some clarity. And one of them, and I think anybody who was in the health committee yesterday, we had a person to testify, and the person got up and testified, and everything went well until the person told us that she was born a female. This person looked more masculine than any man in this room, okay? And what she was saying, she said, okay, you want me to declare myself a female, but if I walked into a woman's restroom, they'd be putting me out. So that within itself needs some in-depth discussions as to how people of that portrait can be going into a ladies' restroom because we say she's a female. So I think that, you know, whatever reason we had a 10-minute calendar, I think on this bill, we need to seriously probably make some amendments, put some more definitions in here, and have a full discussion. Because I'm being honest with you, Representative Lovin, if I walked in the ladies' bathroom and saw that person in there, I'd go back and think I'm in the wrong place. But this is what we're saying here in this bill, that whatever your natural birth is, that's who you are. And like I say, whatever she did and whoever did it, did an exceptional job. I know Chairman Lee can testify. He was as shocked as I was when we learned that that was a woman. So I think that, you know, for whatever reason we needed this 10-minute calendar, I think this body deserves a full discussion on this, because I got a copy and tried to read the entire bill again this morning, and there's nothing in here about restrooms. I think this is an issue that needs to be inclusive in this bill. Now, I think Representative Dubose, she's going to carry it in here, but I just think that, you know, it's too much uncertainty here. We're dealing with some things that we are not professional with, and we're making it law. And to make an issue like this law with so many uncertainties here, we're going to cause more problems than we're trying to correct in this situation. So you know, again, to not delay anything, but this bill became serious to me in committee on yesterday. And I think we have learned so over the years, and we've been dealing with these sexual changes and all that. I have learned so much that I did not know even existed in this world. But it's where they are. So yes, I have no problem defining what a female is or defining what a male is. But when you have a person who has changed their gender in such a way that nobody would even think that they are their original birth sex, we need to have full discussion. We need to have, I know we need some amendments in this bill. And I don't see us having that opportunity to have that full discussion on a 10-minute calendar. So I just ask that you please reconsider this particular bill so that we can make it a good bill. Because, I mean, when parents start complaining about a boy was in my daughter's bathroom, what can we say? We told them, you're a female, you got to go to that bathroom. So, again, I think that there's a need to have some serious discussion on it. And to be honest with you, Joe, I'm not filibustering. I'm here because it became a concern of mine on yesterday. That's why I couldn't believe that we had put this bill on a 10-minute calendar, because there are a lot of unanswered situations that we're going to encounter once this bill is passed. And it's going to make us, I hate to say it, but it's going to make us look a little irresponsible. It's going to make us look not thorough enough as to what we're doing when we put these bills together. Whatever the original objective is, I think it's good if you just want to define, but I think it's already defined in nature what a male and a female is. It's how one wants to identify themselves is what the problem is. And in doing that, I think that many of them have been successful, but we are not addressing all the issues that we need to address in this bill to get it said. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Chair thanks the lady. Chair recognizes the lady from Mobile, Representative Drummond.
I was trying to
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. With a noted chair yield
Yes, ma'am.
in my red. That's fighting colors, aren't they? I too want to join my colleagues. I want to talk about transparency. Do you think a 10-minute calendar is fair to the public for which we represent? I mean, because when I looked at this, I just kept saying, why are we doing this when we're first beginning? We're coming out of the chute. And is a 10-minute calendar fair to the folks that we represent?
Well, you know how the legislative process works. This was an issue that was discussed a lot last year. It's been discussed a lot nationally, and then a lot of discussion leading into session again this year. And then it went through the process in the Senate chamber, and then came through the committee process here, and now to here. And like I spoke to your colleagues earlier, today is a unique situation with the timeline of the legislative process with other happenings in the day.
Well, you know, I was watching at 4 o'clock this morning. I get up at 3 o'clock in the morning. Prayer time and all that.
You said
good
you
stuff.
stayed out till 3 o'clock?
No, I didn't. I was up at 3 o'clock,
Up at
and
3
that's my meditation time. And I was watching the news, and I saw Elon Musk and the president on there, and they were talking about how we have created so much bureaucracy of our rules and regulation that the average person who we represent cannot get full grasp of what we're doing in government. Is this 10-minute calendar not evidence of that? Because many of our members in this chamber, they may feel one way or the other. They may be for what's on the calendar. But 10 minutes to be able to debate something that is so important to so many folks that we represent, and like Musk said, that's bureaucracy at its greatest level. We're just taking it at an accelerated time right now. And I just wonder why. Because it's an important issue that we need to deliberately look at.
Okay. Is it one of the specific bills on here, or one in particular?
Just everything that we do represents people.
Sure.
And see, I sometimes think that we get so caught up in parties that we forget about the folks who sent us here.
Sure.
I'm one of these folks. I look at things in the people realm. And a 10-minute calendar won't give you the transparency for the people to deliberately see that we as public servants are looking at these things very deliberately and very carefully, because they affect lives. You know, somebody's life is on this piece of paper of the action that we will take. And it certainly takes longer than 10 minutes.
Well, and like I told your colleagues earlier, this type of calendar will be a rarity where we're put into a little bit of a time crunch due to other factors. Any process that we go through with any legislation, debate is certainly always ongoing, and I'm very in tune with things that we're doing, and I've tried to do that ever since I came here 8 years ago. And even with the debate in here, rarely have I ever been convinced to change my vote on a legislation, where all the preparation leading into our discussion like we're having right now. I'm not saying that's not important, but as far as the work behind any legislation is usually done in my mind before we get in here. And with everything that we have, with our committee commitments that we have today, I know a lot of members have bills that are in committee leading in today. We were in a time constraint, so we could move through this legislation and move on about the legislation of the day.
And sir, I respect the process, but I want you to think about it in this realm. What we are convening on this morning, it took many of us this morning to get up. It took me 10 minutes just to put my makeup on. It took me 10 minutes to put on my red suit. if I decided to go walking this morning, I would walk. It take me at least 20 minutes to a half an hour. That's what I try to do. And I'm not affecting anybody's life with the action. And what I'm trying to tell you is that the items that's on our calendar today, no matter what the process is, don't you think that those individuals who will be affected deserve more than 10 minutes to decide something that is going to change the direction of how they live in the great state of Alabama?
Well, and I'd respectively disagree. It's 10 minutes today, but we're looking at 2 years of a discussion. And
Two years of discussion?
on this type of matter. So I think the discussion's been ongoing, the legislative process has been ongoing, and then what sums up today is just the 10 minutes. So,
And tell me how much of that process, and I'll use your 2 years, how much of that process has the John K. public been involved in? Because again, today I'm not talking about 2 years. You gave me 10 minutes, that's the process. Sure. 10 minutes that we are to make a decision that will affect somebody's life. And I'm not standing here saying I disagree with anything on here. You'll find that many of us probably agree. But the process of 10-minute calendar, when we first began, I'm one of those folks that when you walk into a room, my mother raised me, she said, Barbara, the first impression means everything.
Sure.
So when I walked into the room, and well, actually last night when I saw my email and it said 10-minute calendar, it said to me, Barbara, you need to be ready to be more defensive on everything. And I don't want to be like that because we are affecting people's life. I think we need deliberate debate. I think we need deliberate discussion. We're in an environment where we compromise, like Representative Warren. I wasn't in her health committee yesterday, but she came to me and was sitting there telling me about what happened in that committee. And I'm sitting there looking at her and she says, I'm serious. She says, the person looked like Joe Lovell down there and he looked like Kelvin Lawrence with hair around his face. And I'm just sitting there listening. It took longer for her to tell me about the health committee than it is for us to be able to debate this calendar. I just don't think that that's fair for an item that is going to affect so many Alabamians. It's going to affect the tenure of Alabama, and it's going to send, as I said before, Mama said, your first impression is your best. I think it'll affect badly Alabama's first impression outside of Alabama. And I just think the process doesn't lend itself to transparency. And that is what we're supposed to be about. We're supposed to be transparent, and we're supposed to be representing people, not a process, but people. And I respect you, I really do. But I just don't think that this sends a good message for this session that we would start with a 10-minute calendar. Do you think that it's going to be so debatable that we shouldn't give it our all due diligence?
Well, in return, much respect for you, as you're well aware. As we look at this and we looked at the time restraints on today, one, like I said earlier, this is going to be a rarity that we would be in this type of calendar. But also as well, with the bill you're talking about, if you didn't know how you were going to vote on it when you walked in the door today, then I'm concerned what type of work you're doing away from here. So I felt like these were issues people knew where they stood and could make that decision, and any comments needed to be made could be made, and then we move.
But before my time runs out,
go ahead.
When I told you I woke up at 3 o'clock, I not only meditate and pray to the God above, but I read my bills.
The chair recognizes the lady in Madison, Revenue Lands.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Does the gentleman yield?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you so much. I guess I'm just confused because this is the first time I've had the 10-minute rule be a thing down here. And I've listened carefully to all of the questions and answers, but I still don't feel like I can explain to my constituents why we invoke the 10-minute rule for this morning and why we're having 3-day weeks so early in the session.
Well, certainly a good question. Like I stated to your colleagues earlier, we're moving through the process. We're getting more and more bills filed. We're up to close to 500 bills now between the two bodies, and I anticipate several more coming. And we have moved through these weeks. Today is a very heavy committee load, which is the main workhorse of this body, is through our committee work that we do. And we identified some bills that had cleared the committee process, and one of these bills had cleared it through the other chamber, through the committee process, and through a vote of their chamber, and it came through the committee process down here. And to be able to move through and then move through to the other business of the state, we only had a certain amount of time today to get through this process. So I feel this is some issues that people know where they're going to vote on and which position they have. I feel like there's not a lot of debate that would sway a vote in this chamber, so we know where we are. But as far as the process, there's been a long process to get to this point. It's just today, due to the process of the other committees that we have meeting today, we had a narrow timeline to meet and get to a vote to move forward with the people's business.
And I understand that. What I don't understand is why we opened the calendar on a Wednesday when if we stuck to 2-day weeks, we would have a lot more time to attend to these bills. So it feels rushed to me, like we're rushing through this.
Well, I guess the real rush is not there. It's like it's been a long marathon race. We're just moving on process to the finish line. And the race is still the same distance. It's just we're running a little faster on that last leg. So we are rolling right back in next week to 2-day weeks. We've got some time to serve our constituents coming up in March, so we'll spend some time back in our districts. And then I think we can all agree efficiency and how we do things is important. And so the people allow us 30 legislative days to be here, and whether it takes us all the way to mid-May to do it or we wrap up earlier, is still the same process. And if the earlier we can get out of here, it saves the taxpayers money. It makes us where we can get back to our districts and serving locally and addressing issues locally that may need to be addressed. So there's a lot of factors that lead into us doing 3-day weeks to get the process going. And as you're well aware, a 3-day week, there's not many things you can do because it takes a full 5-day to pass a bill through both chambers. So just getting that process, getting those days cleared away where bills can get their first, second, third reading and moving along is important. And then this year we just happen to do 2 weeks in a row, moving that process a little bit faster.
Well, I do understand about efficiency, but it still seems there's a balance there between the efficiency and being able to represent our constituents and be able to speak on their behalf. So I still feel like we may be shortchanging the folks that we're elected to serve. Okay. But I thank you for your response.
Sure. Thank you, ma'am.
Sure, recognize the lady from Mobile, Representative Clark.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Chairman,
Yes, ma'am.
good morning.
Morning.
You know, I was really a bit undecided about how I was going to vote on a certain bill this morning, and I was looking forward to the debate. As our colleague, Representative Warren, said, there seems to still be a need for some work that might have been done in the form of amendments this morning, but I don't know that time is going to allow for that. And that was a part of my opposition in rules on yesterday. And you were kind to understand my point of view and my perspective when I voted against the special order calendar. I knew that there would be some opposition, and the expectation would be that I would have opposed, you know, a 10-minute calendar, especially with such a controversial bill on it.
Well, like your colleague said earlier, we can certainly disagree without being disagreeable, and I respect you for always
You
being
and I
that
do that
factor.
pretty well, don't we?
Yes, ma'am.
And I appreciate that. I understood your position as you understood mine. Is there any chance that we can take this very controversial bill off the calendar this morning and put it on an upcoming calendar? I think, does rules meet later today?
We're going to meet tomorrow at 9 a.m.
We meet
Set the
tomorrow. We don't
calendar
meet again
Thursday.
today. And we don't meet today. We met yesterday
Yes,
upon adjournment.
Yes, ma'am.
And then our next meeting will be when?
Tomorrow at 9 a.m.
Okay. And so could we take this bill off the calendar today and put it back on for a later date?
I really feel that we've been through the process with this bill to where we're at a time where most things that need to be said have been said through the process, and that we're as a body or collectively should be ready to vote up or down on the legislation. Your colleague earlier made some great points about other following issues, and there's definitely, with any legislation, other related issues, and we can take up other bills that address those specific matters, where I think, from my viewpoint, this legislation that she's concerned about really dives down to the bare bones basics of an issue, and then we can build back up where we see any specific issues related to the definitions of this legislation. So that's I think we need to stay the course. This type of calendar will be a rarity, and you're very seasoned on the Rules Committee as well. You know this is not usually the case of a calendar where we'd have to expedite the vote. It's just due to our timeline of the day, due to other matters that are important to the people of the state. We've got to move forward, and I think we just, in my opinion, we stay the course for the day and move forward with our calendar as approved by the committee.
What's the urgency? What's the urgency? What would it hurt to carry this bill over and to debate it next week?
Well,
or even tomorrow? Thank you.
Well, this, like I stated earlier, this is not a new discussion. It's a discussion that's been ongoing, and it's been through the process of. And in this case, on the bill that you're being specific about, has been through the Senate process, been through committee, been through the vote of their chamber. Down here, it's been through the committee process and moved forward to vote today. And I think that people have come together and went through the issue as fine-tooth, just as anyone would expect them to. And got us to a point where I think it's time we move on an up and down vote on the issue. And then, like I stated, this is down to basics of this debate. And anything that evolves from that debate may lead, just like in any legislation, to other issues. And so there may be follow-up bills that you may see or some colleague may see that may need to address related back to this issue. That's how we can fix this, or this is how we fix that. And you know, I often say we meet every year so we can fix what we broke last year. So
Yeah.
I
I think I really, Mr. Chairman, would have benefited from being in Health Committee meeting on yesterday, and had I known we weren't going to have this debate in the chamber this morning, I would have missed another committee meeting to be there for a discussion this important. So I have to tell you, I feel deprived. I had not made up my mind and was looking forward to the debate on this bill this morning.
Well, I certainly don't ever want you to feel in that manner, and this type of calendar is a rarity. It's just where we are in the legislative process.
Yeah, you're
I
right.
felt like
We normally have 10-minute calendars much later in the session.
certainly.
But there's no rule that says we can't have one early on, huh?
Well, we hope to move forward with the legislative process as much fairness as possible, but with as much efficiency of the process as well. And I certainly appreciate all your work to do that, even when you oppose the matter from where we feel it needs to move forward. But I think this type of calendar is a rarity, as you're well aware of, and we just have got a lot of the people's business to move forward to, and it's time to make a decision, in my opinion, on issues such as this, and then
The time has expired.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Question for the body now is adoption of the calendar. All those in favor say aye. Any opposed? It has been adopted. Clerk, call the first bill on calendar.
On page 3 of the calendar is Senate Bill number 79 by Senator Weaver relating to sex-based terminology.
Representative DeBose, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm here today to present SB 79, the What is a Woman bill, which passed by Senator Weaver out of the Senate last week. This bill defines and codifies the definitions of sex-based words already in state code. Words such as man, woman, male, female, boy, girl, mother, father, and sex. We have had 6 public hearings on this bill, and this bill has passed twice out of this body. We do need to pass this law for clarity, certainty, and uniformity in the courts and in the laws of Alabama. We have used the word woman 149 times in our Alabama laws. When these words were passed, it was assumed that these words were tied to biology. This bill clarifies the original meaning of sex-based terms in our statutes. It ensures that laws passed by the legislature are applied as this body intended and not twisted by judges or bureaucrats. In Alabama, we have common sense. We know what a woman is. We know that God created us, man or woman, that our sex is fixed and determined at birth. With that, Mr. Speaker, I move for the BIR, and I'm happy to answer any additional questions.
Chair recognizes the gentleman from Jefferson, Representative Rafferty.
Thank you for the recognition, Mr. Speaker. Does the gentle lady yield?
Yes, I will.
Okay, so we've discussed this bill quite a bit yesterday in Health Committee. We had a good talk, good discussion about it. And you know, one of the things that we've seen proposed in other states when similar legislations kind of come up has been, particularly like in Utah, we've seen that there's been relating to these to allow public entities to establish certain single-sex spaces or environments. We've seen compulsory, you know, kind of invasive things that would put people in a precarious situation where they might be subjected to compulsory genital inspections and that kind of thing in order to use those spaces. So I want to make sure that we're protecting our folks from that, and I'm going to introduce an amendment that is germane to this bill. Here's a clean copy of it. So I'd like to introduce that amendment, Mr. Speaker.
Clerk, see the amendment.
Amendment to Senate Bill number 79 by Representative Rafferty.
All right.
Hey, wait just a minute. I've been informed we have got to adopt the BIR before we do this.
Oh.
So you don't go ahead and do that. Is everybody okay with adopting the BIR so he can offer his amendment? Okay. Question for the body is adoption of the BIR. Clerk will unlock the machine and the members will vote. Clerk will lock the machine and record the vote. 76 ayes, 18 nays. BIR has been adopted. Representative Rafter, you can go forward now. I'm sorry.
Okay. So what this amendment does is it replaces lines 123 on page 5 with the following. Nothing in this section shall be interpreted as permitting or authorizing compulsory genital inspections or the use of surveillance camera monitoring device in or immediately outside of a single-sex space or environment, including but not limited to a toilet, bath, shower facility, locker room, et cetera, et cetera. So I would think that it's really important that we protect privacy and safety here for all of our citizens in Alabama. So I'd like the body to consider adopting this amendment onto the bill.
Yeah,
Representative Bose, you've heard the amendment. What's your suggestion?
I would like to lay it on the table. I do not consider that a friendly.
Okay, the sponsor would like to lay it on the table. Clerk will unlock the machine. If you're for laying it on the table, your vote will be aye. If you're opposed to laying it on the table, your vote will be no. Clerk will unlock the machine and the members will vote. Clerk will lock the machine, record the vote. 74 ayes, 24 nays. The amendment has been laid upon the table.
Okay. Thank you for the recognition, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, gentlemen. Chair recognizes the lady from Madison, Representative Hall.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. With the lady yield.
Yes, ma'am.
The amendment that was brought forth had some information relative to how you would determine the possibilities of a process that may be used for determining the sex of an individual. So what do you envision that process would look like, other than the physical appearance of that individual?
I don't envision any process of what you're talking about.
As it relates to?
This bill is simply a definitions bill.
Right.
That's all there is to it. There's no process involved.
So and the reason my question comes up is because I've been told that even in places such as restroom cameras and et cetera, that's what the amendment was trying to do, was to make sure that an individual or cameras in restrooms, those types of things, are being provided to determine the sex of an individual in terms of their
Yeah,
use
that's
or not
totally
use.
outside the scope of this bill and not anything that I'm trying to do with this bill.
So there is the process by which you come up with this definition does what?
It defines male, female, man, woman, boy, girl, mother, father by the biological definitions for the purposes of clarity in the court and
All right,
transparency in our laws.
There are some families, two females, who may be parents of children, and one may be the mother. So how do we deal with that process? How does that?
That doesn't affect that. If they're two females and they're two mothers, that's
okay.
There's no problem.
The same as with two males as
Sure.
well?
Yeah, those are both two
Okay.
physically male men that happen to also be fathers.
And so I think you will find that the individuals that have spoken this morning are not necessarily in opposition to what a male and a female is. That is not the opposition. It is a process by which we've used to get to this point.
Oh, I understand. Yes, ma'am.
And in doing so, that we have not had the opportunity. I don't think that it would have taken any more time than it's been taken, that we've taken at this particular point.
I understand.
It's just the fact that that was the need, or it was felt that that was a need.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, we're going to limit the conversations on it. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Chair thanks the lady. Chair recognizes the gentleman from Clark, Representative Jackson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thanks. Good morning.
Good morning.
You know, I look up and I see all this beauty of the display of God. Then we come in here and do all the confusion that God is not of. The cunning and craftiness of what is taking place here this morning is not of God. So either we need to take our sign down or carry out the mission that we are called to do. When I walked in this morning, I was listening to the debate about a 10-minute calendar on what sex is all about. What sex is God? You would ask the question. And we're discussing male, female. I'm asking you, what does God says? And so we have been infiltrated by man's ideologies until we even believe everything that we hear from them. I asked the question, what color is God? And so we read what man has put in our mind because that's his idea, that's what he wants to believe and accept. But the concept of what is real, do you know him? And so if we know him, then we ought to respond to our knowledge of him. That means that we embrace each other as family. Now, I had said this morning, I got here late because there was a big backup out there on 65 coming in this morning, 85 at least. And I got here a little late. But I had said, why are we meeting at 8 o'clock in the morning for a 10-minute calendar that I didn't know about until I heard the debate coming up? It's the cunning and craftiness of what Satan does. He tried to be, he used the cleverness of trying to be a surprise to what he does. But the Lord let me know that this is not of God. This is not God's work. It's how we portray ourselves as doing Christian nationalism. You know, do you believe in the church and state separation?
Do I believe in the separation of church and state?
That was the question.
I don't believe that's in our Constitution.
I asked you all that. I asked, do you believe it? That's part of the Constitution.
I believe that we are a country founded on freedom of religion, not freedom from religion.
Freedom of. That means if I choose not to, I got that freedom not to. And so you can't force your beliefs on me. And this is not government. This is religion here.
And the gentleman's time has expired.
Thank you.
Question for the body now is the passage of SB 79. Clerk will unlock the machine and the members will vote. Clerk will lock the machine. Record the vote. 77 ayes, 12 nays. SB 79 has passed.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, body.
Thank the lady. Chair recognizes the gentleman from Mobile, Pro Tem Pringle.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Ladies and gentlemen, I move the House stand in recess for committees to meet and leave the journal open until such time as the clerk has completed his paperwork, at which point we will stand in adjournment until Thursday, February the 14th at 10 a.m.
All in favor say aye. Any opposed? We are adjourned.